This is gonna be our ride of the day. We put death on the map.
So, any way you like, we can get 3 on a row. You are about to embark on a journey unlike any you've ever experienced, and we hope it will be one that you will never forget in good ways. So to bring this to the next life, you can scan this QR code on the left. That's going to take you, as we hit different locations, to terrible photos of horrible murder scenes and awful people, and some nice people too. Do be advised, some of the photos have a graphic content warning, and it all goes by locations, so you'll see that come up as you click through according to address. So should you not be feeling sufficiently morbid for the graphic photos, you are under no obligation to click through, although I have the feeling at least some of you will. So while we hope that the tour will be fun and entertaining and informative, I do want to mention that we mean no disrespect to the dead, to the victims of these heinous crimes or their survivors. About the Manson phenomenon. Explaining, unpacking and exploring the relatively short-lived events of August 1969 presents us with one of modern history's most enduring enigmas. On our journey today, I will not presume to provide you with clear answers or neat conclusions. Rather, I'm going to give you dates, locations, factual context and some prevailing theories. My goal is not to make you comprehend the incomprehensible. So I'm going to present you with some remnants of the geographic experience that you won't find online or in a book or film. And I hope you get to leave today with some newfound insights into the crimes, influences and web of characters involved that will further your personal journey to figure out what happened and why. Kathleen Maddox. She was 16 years old. So Kathleen was a petty criminal and rumoured to be a prostitute. Charlie's father was a con artist. Not a good start. When her baby was born, Kathleen neglected to give him a name, and so poor little Charlie came into the world with no name Maddox on his birth certificate. He later got his name from his father, Charles, and from William Maddox, William Manson, a man that Maddox married briefly afterwards. And Charlie used to boast that his mom once traded him for a pint of beer, and his uncle had to retrieve him a few days later. He was bounced around a lot between his mom and his aunt and uncle because his mom was in and out of jail quite a bit. So Charlie's parenting was not the best influence, although I do think his parents were an influence through the sheer force of their neglect. He received and inflicted both physical and sexual abuse. It all started at the age of 9. His criminal act started at the age of 9 when he set his school on fire. So his early life was a whirlwind of crime, juvenile institutions, and then later jail. By the time he got out of jail, after a stint inside at the age of 34 in 1967, he'd already spent more of his life in institutions than out. And Charlie was 5'4" tall. He had long, dark, wavy, unkempt hair, crazy eyes, and a bad beard. I do not know why anybody found him attractive. But they did. He was married and divorced twice, each time fathering a child. He also had a child with Manson family member Mary Brunner. So Charlie got out of jail in Los Angeles in early '67. He moved to the Bay Area, where he hung out a lot in San Francisco and mostly at the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic. In the Haight-Ashbury area of San Francisco, which is still renowned to this day as the birthplace of the hippie movement. He's much beloved by the studios. They wanted to make her a star. So they still remember her at El Coyote. As we cruise past, look for the picture of Sharon to the right of the door there. There she is, poor thing. So she was on a 6-year studio contract. They'd been sending her for acting classes and giving her bit roles around town. And they loved her bubbly personality, sense of humour, free spirit, and also her dedication to her work. She'd gradually been working up the acting ladder. She'd at one point acted in the Beverly Hillbillies, and wearing a black wig so that they wouldn't reveal the full glory of her luxurious blonde locks before they were ready to break her. And break her they did. In 1968, she starred in a hit movie, The Valley of the Dolls, about prescription drug use in LA. Very counter to her bubbly personality. She received a Golden Globe nomination for that performance. So absolutely headed for huge fame. And Sharon was at El Coyote on the night of August 8th, 1969, with her friends. They were Jay Sebring, a celebrity hairstylist, Abigail Folger, heir to the coffee fortune, and Folger's boyfriend, Wojciech Frykowski, an aspiring screenwriter. So all people with bright futures ahead of them, so they thought. And Sharon was eating for two that night. She was 8.5 months pregnant. Had she gone into labour at El Coyote, things would have turned out very differently for all of them. Charles Manson frequented the whiskey. So he was seen here just days before the killings, in the company of Dennis Wilson and the world-famous record producer Terry Melcher, the son of screen star Doris Day, who also at one stage sub-published Charlie's favourite band, the Beatles. And it's still a thriving venue to this day. There's a list here of people who've played there: Frank Zappa, The Doors, Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue. So that evening would have been memorable in terms of the esteemed company that Charlie was keeping. However, it was also memorable to people who were there that night, because apparently Charlie danced so disturbingly that the crowd fled the dance floor.
And try not to be so self-conscious about things that are so normal. People don't notice you as much as if you're, trying to be so shy about everything.
Well, I guarantee you will be noticed by this scene as well as others.
You can just tell from her voice, she's like a super sweet person.
This house right here is where Sharon Tate and her friends were murdered by Charles Manson's family. And it's been demolished. But that's exactly where her property was back in the day, in 1969. but we can't go up there because this street up here is private property. So we're getting a look from a distance. Crazy. It's a big mansion now. On the top of a mountain. Look at that view.
I'm here to do the devil's business. The girls rounded up the other occupants of the house and brought them into the living room. Sharon and Jay were tied together using a rope around their necks that was slung over an exposed beam. So at this point, Jay was really protesting about how they were treating Sharon. She was very visibly pregnant, like ready to pop, and just wearing a bikini-style nightgown. So the killers could see her condition. For his pains, Jay was shot and stabbed 7 times, with Sharon screaming on the other end of the rope, as well she might be. So Abigail ran to the bedroom to retrieve $70, which she gave to the assailants. At this point, Wojciech managed to slip out of the towel binding his wrists. He grappled with Susan Atkins, who stabbed at his legs. And amazingly, he managed to make it out of the front door, but Tex caught up to him on the porch. He pistol whipped him, shot him, and then stabbed him 41 times. Serious anger management issues. Abigail Folger suffered a similarly futile escape attempt. She made it all the way to the pool area, where Patricia Krenwinkel tackled her down, and then she and Tex stabbed Abigail 28 times. And by the end of it, apparently, she was just crying for her mom and begging them to finish her because she knew she was mortally wounded. And she was just the same age as Sharon, 3 days short of her 26th birthday. So, Sharon Tate died pleading for the life of her unborn son, Paul Richard Polanski. Were it not for the Mansons, he would likely still be alive today. So Sharon begged them just to take her hostage for long enough that she could have the baby. And I'm going to point out Portola Drive on our right here. And just if you could mentally note where that is in relation to the house, it's not too far at all. So Susan Atkins later said that she'd wanted to cut the baby out, but there wasn't time. But she wasn't what the courts would call a reliable narrator. She also bragged that Sharon had begged with her, "I don't want to die, I want to have my baby." To which Susan replied, "Woman, I have no mercy for you." Sharon died of 16 stab wounds to the chest and back, inflicted by Tex and Susan. Her baby died with her after she stopped breathing. As a parting shot, Susan Atkins took Sharon's blood and daubed the word pig on the front door. horrible people.
We made an additional stop. We are now in the city of Chatsworth, and we stopped at the Munch Box, which is chili dogs and root beers and hamburgers. And the reason why we stopped here is because Charles Manson used to eat here back in the day. So right across the street here, in that corner, let me place my cell phone down. In that shopping center right here, in that end, one of the family members for Charles Manson used to work there. Her name was Sadie, and she worked as a stripper. So there was like a strip club right here. So while Charles Manson would wait for Sadie to finish her shift, he would come and order hot dogs here and sit down. So we actually just ordered a hot dog, so we're gonna go ahead and try it. But yeah, this was his spot back in the day. So this was very interesting. So we're gonna go ahead and try it. But this is a very historic place, and there's some pictures over here with Elvira and celebrities, and it's like a bunch of history here. So let's go ahead and try out the food. All right, so this is like one of the basic hot dogs that I got. This was like 3 or 4 something, but this one, it has chili cheese and mustard and onions. So I got one of the basic hot dogs here. I'm gonna go ahead and try it out for you guys on camera. I already obviously had a bite of the other one, but I'm eating a hot dog in the same spot that Charles Manson would eat hot dogs. Ain't that crazy? That's what happens when you live in LA. But let's get back.
A 1970 article in Esquire magazine described the ranch as a collection of dilapidated buildings stretching along the dirt road towards Span's shack. Faded exteriors declaring them a saloon, a carriage house, a barber shop, a sheriff's station, a cafe. Weird. All of them had been constructed many years prior as scenes for cowboy brawls and Indian ambushes. So they all burned down. I do wonder if that was an accident. And after Span died in 1974, the city acquired the land and designated it as a public park, allowing nature to take back some of the bad juju. So they noticed in the spring of '68 that objects around their house were moving while they were out. At one stage, the 2 little fluffy dogs had been shut in the house by Rosemary. She then left, not locking the doors because nobody did back then. When she came home, they were out in the yard roaming around. So she and Lena reported these incidences to the police, but nothing was done. What wasn't known at the time was that this was part of Charles Manson's creepy crawly mission. So he would have family members sneak into people's houses, frequently in the dead of night while they were asleep, although in the LaBianca's case during the day while they were out. And they would creepy crawl around and rearrange people's furniture. So this was framed by Charlie as a bit of fun in preparation for Helter Skelter, to shake people up. Clearly he lacked actual entertainment to give to the family, and was trying to keep them engaged. He didn't emphasize the stealing from people, but they also did that. What Charlie was also doing was inuring the family to the idea of housebreaking, illegal acts, and creeping around unnoticed. He was also familiarizing them with the layout of the house. So, the LaBiancas were coming home from a family vacation. It was on August 9th of 1969. And they just dropped off their adult daughter. They were on their way from the airport when they heard some disturbing news on the radio.
In a scene described by one investigator as reminiscent of a weird religious rite, 5 persons, including actress Sharon Tate, were found dead at the home of Miss Tate and her husband, screen director Roman Polanski. Miss Tate, who starred in Valley of the Dolls, was 8 months pregnant and was found in a bikini-type nightgown with a rope around her neck attached to the body of a man.
2 bodies inside, 2 bodies outside.
Among the other victims were Hollywood hairstylist Jay Sebring and coffee heiress Abigail Folger.
So, not the kind of news that you expected to hear back then, or indeed ever. Rosemary was especially disturbed by this. Anyway, they got back home safely, and Rosemary retired to bed while Lino fell asleep on the sofa reading the sports pages. He was awakened by Charles Manson holding a gun to his head, and Tex Watson tying his hands behind his back with a leather cord. Charlie then went to the bedroom where he woke up Rosemary. He allowed her to put a dress on over her nightgown and brought her into the living room. The LaBiancas were panicking, but Charlie reassured them that they wouldn't be harmed or killed, just robbed. Lying toad. So he hadn't been real happy at the general mess of the previous night's murders and was hoping to have this night's batch go rather more smoothly. I'd like to point out straight ahead of us, this is a house where Charlie and the family attended a party in April of 1968 on more than one occasion. And this house right next door to it is where the LaBiancas lived. And this was at the time quite an affluent neighborhood, still is, I guess. So yeah, Charlie one felt resentful, and also he felt the place was sufficiently isolated that they wouldn't be expecting an ambush. So this is the original house from the 60s.